Okay. Got it. Okay. Well, good evening. It is 7:32 and we are back to discuss Taming the Tongue by Mark Kinzer. We're in chapter 3, Whispering with a Neighbor. I cannot repeat enough. The book is 100 pages, people. Let me make sure. I keep saying it's 100. Fine. It's 121 or something like that. Come on. It's 120 pages. You can handle it. Actually, it doesn't even start until page 5. So there you have it. 120 pages. This is one of those books. I'm not quite sure yet how I can send it to people. There are certain people who, man alive, do they need to read this book? I need to read this for sure. We all need to read this. It's one of those books that, you know, you're reading it and you're definitely thinking about other people, but you start to realize, holy smokes, I'm not better than these other people. Maybe they're just really, you know, poster children for what they're talking about in this book, but maybe I'm not that much better. And that's the reason why I'm reading it. So we're going to get into chapter 3 and you'll see there are some parts where I'm going to read quite a bit of it because it's worth listening to what Mark Kinzer has to say. This is about whispering with a neighbor, and it's essentially about gossip. And what gossip is, we talked about slander in the last chapter, and that's where there's outright malicious intent to bring harm to somebody. Gossip has the same intent, but the slight difference may be that it does not produce outright charges of wrongdoing or incompetence, but it spins a web of innuendo and information that binds a person's name and subjects it to criticism and dishonor. The word dishonor is used a lot. It's this idea that when we speak, if we are speaking in a manner that dishonors the person, the institution, but people, if we're speaking in a way that dishonors them, brings disrespect, lowers the esteem of that person in the eyes of somebody else, again, writing just as well, or even listening to such, we are then in a lashon hara, evil speak, wicked tongue, and we are not to speak. And it is a serious offense against the Lord and against anyone who calls themselves a follower of the Lord, a believer in Yeshua HaMashiach. So we gossip whenever we talk about people in a manner that diminishes our hearers' trust and esteem for those people, and whenever we reveal another's personal thoughts and affairs without his or her permission. So that's the basic description of what gossip is. We may think of gossip as a petty sin, almost laughable, easily forgivable violation. It's one of those that when we talk about, well, you know, maybe I gossip, but I'll murder people. You know, we have this ranking system in terms of sin, but God does not have a ranking system. Sin is sin is sin. Violation against God's perfect order, God's perfect design is a violation. Sin, kata'ah, is to miss the mark. Like the bullseye, you miss the mark. So that's what sin means, to miss the mark, what that bullseye is. So it's not, so everything that misses the mark of God's perfection is sin, which means, yeah, we all live in quite a bit of it. So scripture takes gossip seriously. This is from Romans 1, where, is it Paul talking? Yeah. Paul's talking to Romans. He says, and think about the sins he's listing, and gossip's part of it. Just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to their depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. I mean, it's just this, Kinzer says, a blood-curdling list of sins. Gossip, slander also, but gossip is in that blood-curdling list of sins. It is a beyond egregious offense. So no, it's not, oh, it's just a little bit of gossip. It's no big deal. It's a huge deal. If you call yourself a follower of Jesus, if you say that you believe that Yehovah is important to you, if you want to convince the world that you're somehow a good person, don't gossip. And we're going to talk about what it looks like. He actually quotes from another book, and I can't find it at this moment, but here's a quote. I'm afraid that perhaps when I come, I may find you to not be what I wish, and may be found by you to be not what you wish. That perhaps there will be strife, jealousy, anger, tempers, disputes, slanders, gossip, arrogance, disturbances. Again, it's another quote from a major theological piece, I can't find the word, that is listing all those sins and gossips in there. That which causes strife, that which is not agreeable. Again, we have this anger and violence and jealousy, and gossip is in there. So the Greek word in these passages, the one that Paul in particular, is pistherismos, and it means whispering. It suggests critical innuendo and the underhanded revealing of secrets. So elsewhere in the Bible uses the word busybody. In 1 Timothy, it says, it's talking about sort of people who aren't working, people who aren't busy taking care of life. In this specific case, a woman who doesn't have a family that she's taking care of, right? So it's just people who aren't working. They also learn to be idle as they go around from house to house, and not merely idle, but also gossips and busybodies, talking about things not proper to mention. The Greek word for gossip there refers to silly and useless speech, foolish communication about serious or private matters, talk that has no constructive purpose, yet flows on like a powerful cataract, so Kinzer writes it. So again, there's no productive purpose to it. It is merely to slander, to defame, to dishonor. Those who gossip are talking about things not proper to mention. When we disseminate someone's personal and private information, we prove ourselves untrustworthy and disloyal. So a lot of what he goes into is the person who is the gossip. And again, he said this about slanderers. The person who is the gossip, the person who is disseminating this information, that person themselves is not worthy of trusting. To treat lightly information that has been received as a result of a privileged relationship is to abuse our comrade and show ourselves unworthy of friendship. The unfaithfulness is especially gross if the revelations tend to belittle the one who put his trust in us. Gossip thus violates friendship by broadcasting openly what was confided in trusted ears. So someone shouldn't have to say, don't tell anybody this. This is the whole point of that is you shouldn't have to add disclaimers. If someone is telling you something that you know is private information and it doesn't even matter, why would you go take information someone shares with you, short of saying, hey, do you know that so-and-so bought a new car? Hey, do you know that so-and-so got a new car, got a new job? Hey, do you know that so-and-so moved to a new city? That's information, that's facts, that's data, that's public. But to say, hey, did you know that so-and-so is struggling with pornography? Hey, did you know that so-and-so is fighting a lot with his wife? I mean, that's private information that got shared with you. There's no reason to talk about it. We're gonna discuss this. They do add, as always gets added, the one important qualification, the higher law. If the information being shared is going to hurt another, i.e. if someone's telling you they're going to harm somebody, murder someone, rob somebody, you can't keep that quiet. You got to say something. So he doesn't make a big deal about that, but just thought I'd throw that in there given I'm reading his book. So, he goes on to say, the gossip does damage not only to the offended party, but also to himself. He destroys the relationship he already has and ensures that he will find no congenial friends in the future. Who wants to confide in one who has proven that he or she cannot keep faith? The gossip therefore ends up lonely, isolated and friendless. You know, one of the easiest ways to get a friend is to find a mutual enemy, to find something that you mutually disagree on. That's the easiest way, tapping into our fears, our dislikes, tapping into the baser senses of who we are, our more animalistic instincts, our base nature. It's the quickest way to get somebody interested when you talk about them, they, that, something out there that we disagree with. It's the quickest way to get someone to sort of buy in with you. But it's also, if that person has a discerning mind, a discerning heart, a God-fearing mind and God-fearing heart, it's the quickest way to absolutely lose that friendship. And eventually, if the person is of God, is of good quality mind, they'll walk away from you anyway. So pitfalls and paths. So he talks about there are 4 ways that we can get into gossip unbeknownst to ourselves. Again, for those of us, he's basically trying to say that, look, a lot of us tend to gossip and we don't even all realize that we're doing it because it's kind of easy to fall into it. He says there's 4 ways. One is speaking about other people's problems in a way that could reflect on the people's character or competence. So it's that really subtle line between, hey, saying, hey, let's pray for our brother, right? Let's pray for our sister. Hey, let's gather in union in support of our brother or sister, and doing it to gossip, right? Talking about someone struggling, talking about someone because it makes you feel superior in some weird fashion. When there's not productive use of that. Again, if you're bringing something to the attention of others, a problem someone has, and you're doing it because you're trying to help find a solution to be of service. Again, someone is struggling, and so maybe you can go bring them meals, maybe you can go take them to a dinner. That's different, but it's a subtle line. So that's why we can get into it. We can get into gossip because we step over that line so quickly, so easily. So again, speaking about other people's problems in a way that could reflect on the people's character or competence, meaning lower it in the esteem of the eyes of another. Second thing we do is speak about other people's weaknesses, temptations, and sins. Again, people will tell you about they struggle with addictions or laziness or sloth or greed or envy. They'll tell you these temptations and these sins and these weaknesses. And to therefore bring that to the attention of another, well, did you know that so-and-so says that they're super greedy? No wonder why they're always trying to get ahead in the work, or whatever you may say, right? Ways that, again, denigrate, disrespect the person in the eyes of the hearer, or the eyes and the ears of the hearer. So again, you got to be very careful about speaking about other people's weaknesses and their temptations, their sins. And in most cases, this is one area where maybe you don't. Again, unless you're going to a trusted advisor, somebody who maybe you want to help intervene. And again, that's a subtle line. 3, speaking about other people's private and personal affairs. So this for sure is maybe the issue. And he says, maybe it's not even necessarily a negative thing. It's a private thing. It's not something that's proper to talk about. I'm going to give some good examples, so I'll mention them. I hear that John and Mary don't use any birth control. I mean, what they do in their bedrooms, what they do in their bedroom, how they manage that process is how they manage it. Sam told me that he really dislikes his new boss. That might seem to some of us not as egregious, but again, you're telling somebody else that somebody else, the problem with somebody. I mean, gosh, what if that somebody else knows the boss? I mean, you got to be very careful, right? Or who is Carol dating now? And so you're talking about Carol's dating life. Again, not appropriate. Talking about how much money people make. So he gives a lot of examples, and it's like, you got to kind of think about them because, like, gosh, have I ever said stuff like that? So again, speaking about that which should not be discussed. And finally, speaking critically about the various areas of other people's lives. So, this is, again, examples are good. The criticism issued in gossip are often small and have to do with apparently trivial matters, yet they are barbed and they leave a wound. And so here's some examples. I think Nancy has such poor taste in clothing. if you ask me, Tom and Laura don't spank their children often enough. I wish Dave would repaint that ugly garage of his. It's a wonder that Laura ever passed her driver's test. She's awful behind the wheel. As with slander, the proper ones to hear are complaints and criticisms are the objects of them, and some other proper authority if necessary. To pass such comments along to others is pure and undiluted gossip. So again, those are the 4 pitfalls. There's a lot of overlap, but I think in the end, take away, if my heart is not pure and desire to be helpful, I probably just don't want to say it. And I have a feeling if you actually exercise that, at least it's been my experience, you end up being real quiet. And when someone gives you permission because they make the statement, I have responded, I'm working real hard not to talk about people. Leave it at that. And they leave it alone too. So what do you talk about? Just in case you didn't know, you talk about the good things. It's good to speak of other people's virtues and admirable qualities. It's good to speak about other people's successes. We can also pass on freely the blessings others have experienced. So that which is good, you're excited, they closed a huge deal, they won the lottery, they fit into the dress they couldn't fit into for years, they ran a marathon, they had a baby, they got married, all things that are good and joy-filled. It can share information. Gossip means useless, silly, and critical speech about other people. Speech that subtracts from the respect and esteem our listeners have for them. I'm going to read that again. Gossip means useless, silly, and critical speech about other people. Speech that subtracts from the respect and esteem our listeners have for them. So he goes into then sharing of the news. Now, again, some of us, be careful. We can get such in the habit of sharing about other people, basically always talking about people. If you have seen the statement, it's a plaque that hangs on my wall. It says, small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events. Great minds discuss ideas. So if your speech is full of talking about people all the time, even if it's full of talking about all their great successes, you're probably veering into what's called idle curiosity, and it can lend itself to those areas, opening the doors of the gossip, whatnot, and you're not expanding your mind. Again, small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas. So if you find that you're just super interested in people, you're a social scientist like me, what is it about what those people are doing, experiencing? What does it say to you about you? What does it say to us about society? So as you want to talk about Mary, Joe, Billy, Bob, don't say Mary, Joe, Billy, Bob. Say, there's this woman I know, and this has occurred for her. And it makes me, I'm excited. She's a friend of mine. I'm super excited for her, or she's a colleague and I'm super thrilled for her. But it's got me thinking about X. What do you think about, I don't know, this issue in society? And so move it into the realm of ideas. Move it away from the focus on the person. That's a huge sort of, again, tip for me to you, not necessarily in his book, but so again, we can share neutral information. We can share information that's helpful and necessary. But be careful if your conversations are full of just the people itself. Move it away into the ideas that you're trying to get at, because that's what you're doing. I'm just letting you know, if you didn't know, those of you that are prone to gossip, what you're interested in is the human story. We're all interested in the human story. So that's a way for you to go, wow, okay, I'm prone to gossip, or I'm prone just to talk about people. Even I'm talking good stuff, but that's my whole conversation is about people. Maybe I need to work on everything I want to say and go, what am I getting at? What ideas am I getting at? What questions about humanity and society and myself are interesting me based on this case study of this person? So maybe that'll help you. So they, as he said before, as with slander, we are just as guilty when we listen to gossip. as if we had spoken it. So we're also just as guilty if we read gossip or listen to it. So what's on TV and the radio and blogs and vlogs and all the verbal stuff like this, right? Listening to people online, anything you're listening to, anything that you're reading. So anything that is just hyper-focused on criticizing people, you're guilty of being a gossip. You're guilty of being that which God does not deem worthy of respect. Didn't say God doesn't love you, but God has no appreciation for how you are behaving in the moment at all. Not all. This is from 1 Peter. Let none of you suffer as a murderer or as a thief or as an evildoer or as a busybody in other men's affairs. So again, look at that list: murderer, thief, evildoer, busybody. Puts all these words in one sentence, which means being a busybody, being so preoccupied with the lives of others that you run around gathering stories and disseminating these stories. You're really, really busy. So you're a good worker. You're working hard. You're moving a lot, but all you're doing is just talking about people. That is not a good thing. The other way that gossip gets discussed in the Bible is kind of the actions of the gossiper. It moves into this very energetic person. And the reason why this comes up is because the word busybody is used rather than gossip at times, because it's trying to actually say the word busybody has the word work. The word in Greek is peri-ergazome, and ergazome is to work. So it's this sense that this person is working, but they're working on the wrong thing, right? So the word in Greek is ergazome, peri-ergazome, is derived from the verb that means to work. In this context, the word refers to those who are energetic and industrious in supervising others' business and idle in managing their own. They are restless, consumed with curiosity, and the desire to influence the lives of other people, preoccupied with matters that should not concern them, irresponsible in conducting their own affairs. Take responsibility for the things God has entrusted you and lay aside your compulsive preoccupation with the things that belong to others. When I would manage teams, and inevitably in managing teams, a lot of you who've managed teams recognize this, you have at least one person that comes to you and they're a busybody. They're always telling you how little everybody else works and how hard they work, right? I used to say to those people, if you have so much time that you can track and monitor the work effort of other people, that means you're not working hard enough. And I would get them to stop talking about other people. You don't worry about what other people doing. You go do your work. I'm the boss. I oversee everybody. I'll be fine. It'll come to fruition. So again, those people who run around talking about how little everybody else works, how hard they work, it's usually an indication you're a gossip busybody and you're actually not working hard enough. So I'm going to end with this. And actually, this is great because this will be about a half an hour of a video rather than the hour-long ones I've been doing. And I'm going to read all of it. It's like the last, where's the lighting coming from? It's the second to last page of this chapter. We all have the potential to act as busybodies, and many of us regularly realize this potential. A busybody is also quick to offer opinions about situations that he or she knows little of and bears no responsibility for. This person will comment on the political and economic scene with the authority of an expert, though the busybody has only read a weekly news summary and watched his or her favorite political interview show. Such a person will freely criticize leaders of the community for the way they mishandle various affairs, evaluating the work of committees that he or she has only heard of secondhand. A busybody will lecture at length on how poorly various parents in the neighborhood raise their children, singling out families that he or she finds especially negligent. There is almost no area of life on which the person will not eagerly and authoritatively render an opinion. Of course, this is a caricature. A few purebred busybodies roam restlessly about, but many ordinary people occasionally dress like a busybody, but then hastily change their clothes so as not to be recognized. We all have the potential to act as busybodies, and many of us regularly realize that potential. The key step, as in all such matters, is to recognize honestly our wrongdoing and resolve, with God's help, to change. God does not want us to be busybodies or gossips any more than he wants us to be slanderers. Friendship and trust. Life works much better for all of us if we have people around with whom we can speak openly and personally. Some elements of our lives we can share only with a few trusted friends, and some of us find it difficult to share personally, even in this context. However, our lives will probably be lonely and disturbed if we can trust no one with our sins, weaknesses, failures, ambitions, and deep desires. Gossip destroys the bond of friendship. It makes it impossible for us to trust anyone with those matters that should not be blasted over the radio or read in the newspaper. Where gossip prevails, their relationships will be shallow and individuals isolated. Where gossip is uprooted and trust established, there shall be fulfilled the words of Psalm 133:1. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. Shalom. Taming the Tongue by Mark Kinzer. Get the book, 117 pages. Next week, I believe we will go over chapter 4. Chapter 4, on July 7th, we will go over slapping with a smile. This is the one where a lot of the, just kidding, I'm just joking around, I'm just messing with you. If you weren't my friend, I wouldn't razz on you. This is that chapter. So slapping with a smile. I look forward to hopefully people joining. It's much better if people join. I know I'm reading at you, but yes, I do give time for us to talk about it after the fact. So I hope this was helpful. Maybe one way, if you think of somebody who you want to have read this book, but you don't know how to get it to them, just share these videos with them. Maybe it'll encourage them to get the book. All right. Shalom.